So Elizabeth, I'm delighted to welcome you. So Elizabeth is a somatic movement therapist, an energy healer, an educator, and the founder of Evolutionary Somatics, a healing movement practice for restoring physical vitality, post-traumatic growth, and co-creative futuring. She's an internationally recognized presenter on Facia, energy healing, and somatic movement for physical and emotional well-being, conscious evolution, and the new science of coherent into being. That is so exciting. And what I love is we're starting with Fascia and we're getting all this stuff that people used to say, oh, it's woo-woo, and now the science is there, which is amazing, and they're just catching up with us, which is great. So today is all about, everybody, is what we do every year. The Fascia Hub teams up with somebody who really knows their stuff, somebody like Elizabeth, and we put on a free session to help everybody as the pressured part of the year, the Christmas thing, starts to hit us. You know, we go into the shops and it's all around us now, isn't it? You know, it's only just December and it's all around us. And it's difficult, you know, because we are therapists, we're movement educators, and we have been doing the cards, we're doing the presents, we're sorting out the kids, we're sorting out the meals. There's a lot going on. And today is a session for you. There's going to be some theory. The main thing about today is mostly going to be movement practices. And Elizabeth is going to teach us how to ride it, storm, and how to maintain our coherence instead of becoming incoherent with all the pressure around us. So, Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm delighted to hand over to Elizabeth Dare Andes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. It is delightful to be here with all of you today. I'm so honored that I get this opportunity. And I just want to say, let's just give ourselves this time for a little movement and deep self-care. And I want to welcome you all. The name of today's class is When Things Don't Fall Apart, Exploring Our Capacity for Coherence. Now, I just want to explain that that's a little bit of a wordplay on Pema Chodron's book, When Things Fall Apart. Beautiful book. Because sometimes things do need to fall apart. You know, in order for us to grow, we need to molt. We need to evolve. And it can be a really scary thing. And our bodies can hold it as much as our psyches are holding it. And we don't even realize it. And so I think it really helps us to be able to have a touchstone to know, okay, I can let this process of whatever shifting is happening to happen because I have the capacity within me to generate the coherence. And that gives me the faith that things will come together, that things will adapt in a better form for meeting the way that the forces are impacting us at the moment. So what's coherence? You know, the conventional thoughts about what coherence are is that it's a consistency, connectedness, this idea of information and being connected, not having disowned parts or dissociated parts everywhere, and also the consistency of that connection through time. Those are two biggies. In his book, Energy, Medicine in Therapeutics and Human Performance, James Ockman, who I think is just brilliant, and I wish that he was, and I think he is, becoming more and more recognized for his amazing contributions. He describes coherence. He has a lot about coherence in this book. He describes it as a physiological state of uninterrupted communication flow throughout the body. And he talks about cellular memory. He talks about patterns in our cells and in our tissues that live beyond the neural networks. And they create this kind of body-wide cellular network of information. Heart Math Institute, wonderful organization out in California, they've done a lot of coherence work. And they say coherence equals health. It's interesting. What creates incoherence? Non-coherent states. Fear, anxiety, stress, panic, pain. Now, when you think about this, cellular memory, the capacity for cellular memory that we have, and these various emotional states, you have to connect the fact that these emotional states are somehow encoded in the body, in the cellular memory. And this can then lead us to a deeper inquiry about our filters. Where's my edge? How do I respond to outside forces? Again, quoting Achman, or referencing him, because he didn't say this exactly, he speaks of the wall of the cell being a very thin membrane that is highly electrically charged. It's very reactive. It's very responsive. So how does that cell respond to these changes that are impacting it? And can I, and if I can, how can I participate in creating a sense of internal order in myself? How do I create that harmony and that stability with flow in a kind of rhythmic motion, and sustain it over time? And here's the interesting thing about coherent waves. Coherent waves are waves that are peaks and valleys, but imagine layers of them stacked one on top of the other. Well, all the peaks and valleys exactly connect. They don't connect this way, but they connect this way. They're in harmony. So every peak is above another peak. Every trough is above another trough. And so when you have this moving, you get this coherent wave. Unlike an electric light, laser light is a coherent wave. But electric light, those waves would be jumbled. They wouldn't match up. So when you have waves like this, they don't know boundaries. They just keep on moving. There's a tremendous accumulated, interconnected power in that. And it can transmit far distances. Definitely beyond this body, this auric field. So coherence seems like a pretty good idea. It seems like a capacity that we actually all have within us that we can develop. And like anything else, you begin to set your intention to develop it and turn your attention to ways that you can develop. And I'll talk more about that later. But what I really want to get back to before that is to just mention how the heat seems to be turning up these days. You all know what I'm talking about. There's so much going on. It's not just a busy holiday season. There's so much going on in the world. There's so much change and uncertainty and suffering everywhere we look. And, we all feel it. We're all impacted by it. What I want to share with you is that I feel like when you get to way up to 35,000 feet, what you realize is, wait a minute, all these meta crises that are converging everywhere, they are really, there's one looming crisis that's kind of underlying the whole thing, and that is the looming ecological crisis that we face. It's turning up the heat on so many different things that are going on in the world today. That we've gotten to this point where we really can't predict anymore. We can't predict what's going on. The weather patterns are shifting. The storms are getting more and more intense. Our droughts are sending people migrating great distances, to say nothing of war. So in this world where we're all living with the truth of uncertainty, a more chaotic system, maybe the best preparation for that, how do I deal with that? How do I teach my children and my grandchildren to deal with that? Maybe the thing that I can do is focus inside me first with this question, well, okay, if I'm feeling this agitation, this non-coherence, what is keeping me from moving forward in a way that makes me feel more in flow, more stable? And a lot of times you're not going to answer that question with your mind. You're going to find it in the unthought knowings of your cellular memory, of your consciousness of your ancestors. The distinctions blur when we get into these levels of what we call interoceptive awareness, because in a way you can think, well, I am an archive. I am a living archive of history, of my land, of my ancestors, and at the same time that I hold all that, I am also holding any number of potential futures. And in this present moment, it's in a coherent state that I can call in those present futures. So the way we're going to work today is through sound and breath and wave movement. We're going to really let our fascial living liquid crystal matrix soften and come alive with movement, sound, and breath, rather than with instructions, because it's got to emerge from here, not here. This will change, it will phase change your tissue. So what was once an interference pattern can now become more like quiet flow. Now we can look at biological coherence, we can look at biotensegral coherence, we can look at quantum coherence and be talking about energy waves, we can look at psychodynamic coherence, patterns of the way that we hold energy in our bodies to respond to various early attachment issues that didn't make us feel safe. And so we can reshape our bodies to hold tension and pressure in certain ways. So, you can go when the newsletters are published and you want more information, more of the science-based stuff. I invite you to go the short article. The long article, has a little bit more, but I touch on some of these ideas, and then I list resources. By no means are they exhaustive, but at least you can touch back in to the resources if you're interested in learning more. But for me and for us today, what I want to share with you is what works for me. And I find the coherence in my body. And in order to find it in my body, I turn to the earth's body. Nature's my greatest teacher. Specifically, we're going to look at wind and water today. So, we're fluid resonant beings. I mean, we're between 70 and 90% water. Water has this capacity to spiral toward what it longs for the most, which is to be spherical, which is its whole spherical nature. You see it in the bathtub when you have a drip just hanging out of the faucet, and there's a little teardrop, but at the bottom it's spherical. And you see it in a stream that meanders towards its wholeness, its serpentine movement. So meanders are actually a feature of certain streams that are a really interesting feedback process, because as it goes one way toward the bank, it does erosion, and then it goes the other way and it deposits. And then it does it again, and then it does it again. And it kind of grades its way through. It does this to create structure and order. And that structure and order is always changing and always adapting to forces. Now we find the faster flow on the edges. Faster flow is just a fact, right? You're not going to get away from intense forces impacting us. So there's a bit more action on the edges, but the slower middle is also really interesting. And have you ever seen a wide, lazy stream? And in the middle is just this kind of glassy, quiet area. That's called a laminate. Just like laminated flooring. Well, not just. But it's a natural phenomenon. And this is where things calm down. Robert Frost wrote a poem about this west running brook, and he's sitting by the riverbank with his lover, and his lover says, "Why does the stream flow west, my love?" And then he answers him, and he says that in this meandering, the opposite forces meet, and when the opposite forces meet, the center, like a Vesica Pisces, that calm center opens up. And that is coherence. But coherence is not like a constant thing. Coherence shifts. There's a spectrum of coherence. There's more coherence and less coherence. But there's coming away from coherence and finding our way back to it. This is the teaching that the meander and the laminate hold for me. So that laminate wave I call a coherent wave. And I want to tell you a little story now. This is a true story. This is about wind and water and elements, natural elements being shaped by in nature. So, as I was saying earlier, I live in New York State in the Catskill Mountains at the edge of a wild forest and national park area. So forever wild. It's quite rugged and beautiful. And I live right on the edge of what is known as Diamond Notch. It's sacred land. The Lenape, the Esopus tribes, even the Mohawks would come to this area. They'd come nearby to hunt, but they would come to this area to worship. And you can feel, there's a beautiful energy here. Well, anyway, I live on Diamond Notch. And Diamond Notch is a pathway that has cut it right between the mountains. So it's just this passage that has opened. Now, there's two kinds of notches, wet notches and dry notches. I live on a dry notch. A dry notch is carved by wind. A wet notch is carved by water. So it's a wind notch that I live on. A wind notch that has carved, the winds have carved a passage through this rock Catskill. If you dig a little bit in the Catskill Mountains, you're going to hit rock. There's a lot of density for that wind to move through to do its magic. Well, there is a word you may be familiar with. It's a Hebrew word. It's called ruach. Ruach is a name for life-giving sacred wind. Some kind of magical wind that brings life back, revitalizes everything. And there's a very similar word in Islam, ruh. And so what I've done today for us to play with sound and breath is that I've created what I call the wind breath based on this. And I'm going to demonstrate it, and we're going to play with it a little bit together now. But don't expect to hear the breath through your computer and then repeat the sound that you hear for yourself. Because one, you probably won't hear it. It probably won't broadcast through. And two, I don't even care if you hear it. Because I want you to hear it inside. I want you to hear that unstruck chord. You know, you've had experiences where you've heard the wind at night. You know what that feels like in your body. You've heard a windy night. You've heard wind carrying a certain energy that's strong, maybe even sometimes fierce. And then you've also heard the wind on a summer day when there's this delightful breeze that just, it's hot, things are still, and all of a sudden, whoosh, some beautiful soft breeze spirals and moves the leaves in the trees, and you get like this wonderful breeze and this opening feeling in your body. So first let's start playing with the first syllable, ru. And the R sound, you don't even have to be like trying to make that R sound. You just want to make a sound that is more like an evocative sound that you've heard from wind. So I'm going to make this audible for a second just so you see how I shift. Instead of going, I might go, in other words, I might start playing with the a little bit. So you're going to vary it and soften it and make it more of a sound that you make inside your body, so it's not even audible. So let's just play with that first part a little bit. Everybody, take a deep, easy, full breath. Sit up straight. Put your feet on the floor. Open your chest. Open your crown. Feel the whole space around you. And then whenever you're ready, another deep breath in. And remember that sound as you exhale. The wind blowing through the room. Not fierce, but steady. And then let's try that second syllable. The rah, the ah. It's very easy to have it become ah. Or have that become I want you to take complete license here with the sound as it moves through your tissues, moves through the cavities of your sinuses, your larynx, your pharynx, your whole torso. You want to feel the sound rather than hear the sound. So before we actually start playing with the sound, I want to do a little warm-up of our instrument. And I want to play with this thing I call the jellyfish breath. So I think about jellyfish floating like a syzygy. You know, a syzygy is a lineup of planets, just kind of hovering one right over the other. So I have the pelvic diaphragm, that's the base jellyfish, and I have the respiratory diaphragm floating above her, and then I have the upper thoracic diaphragm, and then I have the roof of the mouth diaphragm, and then I have the cranial diaphragm. That's enough to work with. And I think about these jellyfish, and they're floating kind of in a synchronicity. It doesn't mean that they are doing a coherent wave. So think that the respiratory diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm are going like that, but that the upper diaphragms are going like that. And don't even think about it if that makes your head spin a little bit. But what I really want you to think about is this idea that something is floating. Something is gently floating in you. It's like jellyfish floating in a gentle tidal pool. And sitting up nice and straight, you're going to place your hands on your ribs. And as you breathe, you're going to just feel your ribs expanding in your hands, side to side. Just take a couple of deep, easy breaths here. You might notice, if you do this a lot, that you have one side that feels a little bit more restricted than the other. Now, sometimes it's fun just to notice that. And on your next inhalation, you just set the intention and you put your attention there to allow that more restricted side to begin to open a little bit, to blossom a little bit. It wants to. It'll find its path. And then place one hand on your chest or your sternum or your belly and the other hand on your back right behind it, wherever you want to put that hand. But you really want to know that you're holding the front of your back body. And then breathe again, deep, easy, comfortable breaths. And you want to begin to notice how, is there more expansion in the front body? Are you more of a front breather? And if so, you want to really put your focus on the back, allowing the back ribs to move into your head. And how does that begin to shift your awareness of the rest of you? Maybe you're starting to feel sensation moving down your legs. Maybe you're starting to feel some kind of opening in your chest. Now, finally, what I want you to do, and I'm going to move my chair back just a teensy for this, is I want you to put one hand on the top of your pubic bone and the other hand on your collarbones. And sitting up nice and straight, as you inhale, can you feel the collarbones and in fact the whole shoulder girdle starting to gently rise? And you exhale and they descend. There's that jellyfish. And then bring your awareness to your pubic bone. And can you feel on that inhale the pubic bone gently descending toward you? Along with the respiratory diaphragm. Maybe you feel that. And then as you exhale, that pubic bone gently flows back where you began. So practice this now with a couple more breaths and see if you can really be more globally aware of the breath that moves up at the collarbones and down at the pubic bone on the inhale, and slowly returns back down at the collarbone, floating back up, at the pubic bone as you exhale. So you have this wave on the bottom, and then you have this wave on the top. Now, we're going to see if we can build a sense of more of a dynamic power in the core of the body with this idea of the breath by playing with the tongue. So on the inhale, what I want you to do is to just allow the tongue to float up to the roof of the mouth, to the dome of the mouth, and slightly a little bit forward to the teeth. Now, while you're doing this, just put your hand on the occipital bone, the back of your head, and know that the inhale doesn't bring the head forward. The head stays released back into your cone. And as you inhale, then you can relax your jaw and open up your sinuses and open up your larynx and your pharynx. And then as you exhale, there's a gentle releasing down of the tongue. And as the tongue releases down, it's interesting because if it's a jellyfish, it moves like a jellyfish, right? So it'll come up and dome up, and then it'll come down and kind of widen and flatten a little bit. But you're in the water. You're in movement. So find the roots of your tongue. The roots of the tongue, like the tendrils hanging down in a jellyfish. And just know that the water can gently create a little bit of flow. Kind of like when a wave moves back into the sea. The wave comes up, like the tongue comes up, and the wave goes back. And the roots of the tongue kind of create this gentle flowing action that enable all of this to drop and add the sense of ruach, life force energy, hydraulic pressure coming from the core of the body so that there's a pulling in and a pushing out. A natural breath connected, pulling in, gathering in, much like the fascia will gather in, and pushing out, much like the bones push out into the space around you. And that relationship, that is at the core of this biotensegal pulsation of your fascial wave. So, I want you to practice this a couple times. And then we're going to go down and make a transition to the floor. So, taking a nice deep breath in, the tongue comes to the dome of the mouth. Everything opens up. Your head is pressing back into the hand. Just gently touch your neck. That contact is enough to remind you not to jut your head forward. And then, as you exhale, the tongue descends, the root of the tongue gently pulls. And I want you just to inhale and exhale like this a couple times on your own. Really tracking the sensation in your body as you do it. Now the next time that you exhale, you're going to exhale as fully, completely as you can, keeping it gentle. You're going to pause. And you're not going to just inhale right away, you're going to wait. You're going to wait for the body's impulse to inhale. Your body will tell you when it needs to inhale. So try it again. Inhaling. Long exhalation with that release and that gentle flow back to the root of the tongue. And then whenever you're ready, the body will tell you when it wants to inhale. feel like you're suffocating or anything, don't worry about that. You're going to have full control to breathe in whenever you want. But sometimes we're just kind of on the overculture's time clock, and to find our own inner rhythm, our own inner pulsation through breath and through sound and through movement is how we begin to develop this capacity to call up that coherent wave in ourselves. So let's go down to the floor now. We're going to make a little transition. I have a mat on the floor, just moving my laptop a little bit. Okay, so that's pretty good. And what I want you to do first of all is make sure that you have a comfortable space to lie down and have some room around you. You don't need very much room. If all you have is a yoga mat, that's all you need. It's absolutely fine. If you have a couple of feet to either side, and we may want to do a little moving around, then that's fine too, but it's really not necessary. And then I want you to make sure, I hear it's a rainy day in England, it's a rainy day here in the Catskills. And if you need a blanket nearby or a pillow or something to make yourself comfortable, then by all means do that. Take care of yourself. Because this is not one of those movement practices where you have to get the movement right. This is all about your movement exploration, your moving meditation. I want to take you on a journey to help you get a taste of what James Ockman calls the continuum pathway. He's referring to the brilliant, one of my dearest teachers, Emily Conrad's movement practice of continuum. I call it the coherent wave. So it's not exactly the same thing, but I think you will get a sense of what that coherent wave really feels like. So lie down on your backs. Lie down, spread your arms and legs in any position you feel is comfortable, and just come to rest. You're going to land in your body. You might want to close your eyes. That feels safe to you. I think it always takes some time to transition, to let the particles of your being kind of float back down into your body again. All the energy of your mind, lie in and let yourself really notice any sound. What's the temperature? And I really rest myself down and take room, pause, find a moment, or find a slow down. And then I watch my breath change. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes. Taking a soft breath. Taking a soft breath of it. So we just really focusing on nothing in particular, but seeing the whole field. And on the ceiling, in the space around you, near the ceiling, in you. And then just keep your place where you kind of take it all so that you begin this very gentle rocking. Doing as little movement in the ankle as possible, as little tension in the muscles of the legs as possible, and then just let your feet drop open and be still. And while we're in this stillness, can you begin to sense flow moving through the body that maybe you didn't sense before? This we call first order sensation. You don't even remember that, it's not important. But what you do want to remember is, look at that feedback coming into my body that's not about thoughts. That's about energy, what it feels like, that's about maybe it feels prickly, maybe it feels fluid, maybe it feels meandering. And then slowly bring your feet up and bend your knees, and your feet are now going to do that rocking. So let's feel the feet, four corners of the feet on the floor. So get at the big toe, ball of the foot, baby toe, ball of the foot, inner heel, and outer heel. Four corners of the foot. Add to the four corners now in your awareness, the awareness of the whole ball of your foot. Add the awareness of all of the toes, each of the 10 toe pads making contact with the floor. Add an awareness of the outer border of the foot. And finally, add an awareness of this U-shaped curve of the heel. And then bring your awareness back to the four corners, all of the foot of the big and baby toe, inner heel, and outer heel, as your primary connection points, your roots, and send down your awareness through those 4 points. You can add a slight bit of pressure, but it's more of intention. It's more of your putting your attention there, and the focus begins to give a sensation of shift. Shifting sensation now, whereas before you might have felt not so connected and rooted in the feet. Just by bringing your idea of that connection, by rooting, bringing the intention to root, there's the sensation maybe of little mycelial webs rooting down, spreading out, giving you a bigger base. And then begin to rock a little bit forward and back on those feet. And as you're rocking forward and back, then just begin to notice what else could be moving. And maybe the pelvis is starting to rock forward and back. Now what happens when you rock forward and back and you let the pelvis start to move, and then you begin taking away any tension in your thighs, any excessive pushing through the feet, and you just kind of let it become awake. What else starts to move? Maybe the spine, maybe the torso is also beginning to move. Maybe the cranium is also beginning to move. And you're carrying this wave, this vertical wave, up and down through the whole body. Now what happens if you start to take a breath and you exhale and you make your woo-la sound? You're the wind, you're that dry wind moving through the notch in the density of your body. What might start to happen is what just started to happen to me is that the movement shifted its axis, and I'm doing a little figure 8 movement in my belly. I'm doing a little figure 8 movement in my feet. If I keep going, I'm doing a little figure 8 movement in my torso and in my head. And the idea is to just begin to free up a desire for the body to unwind itself in the next way. And you can begin to just follow this. The body will start to make its shift. I have a knee reaching forward, and then I pull it back. I have another knee reaching forward. So I'm beginning to create these rhythmic movements in my body, rhythmic waves moving through my body. Take another deep breath in and continue playing with this. Have fun. Enjoy this. This is something that you will want to let yourself explore, to let yourself play with as we move through. And now, slowly bring yourself to stillness. And let yourself move into a starfish pattern. So a starfish pattern is that you reach your arms and legs out like a starfish, and you reach your head out because a starfish has 5 limbs. So you've got your arms and your legs, but you've also got your crown. And so as you're lying there on your mat, let yourself spread out into this starfish pattern. You're going to expand out. You're pushing through the head, you're pushing through the arms, you're pushing through the legs. You're not going too far. You're just exploring that expansion. And then give yourself a moment and be there in stillness. And take a baseline. Drop into your feeling. Drop into your sensation. What's moving through you now? That's really what you want to start noticing. Because when we quiet our thoughts, there's a whole world. There's nature lives inside you. The winds live inside you. Movement and waters, the waves live inside you. So we're going to do this exploration now, and I'm going to give you a little bit of structure. So what you're doing now is kind of taking stock. It's called a baseline. Now you're going to drop into your breaths. And I want you to do maybe 3 to 5, as many of these wind breaths as you're moved to do. While you're doing them, I want you to maybe visualize how that coherent wave moves. So the peaks line up and the troughs line up. And that wind that is moving through you in the wind breath, it's a coherent wave. And then you're going to start to explore movement for yourself. Maybe you're pushing out through one limb or 2 limbs, or maybe all your limbs. Maybe it's fingers only. Maybe you're doing micro movements at the tips of your fingers. But you're pushing. You're pushing out, and then you're pulling in. So as you begin your exploration, don't look at what others are doing. You want to find the impulse to move, moving you, just like you found the impulse to breathe, breathing you. And at first, if it's breath timed, so you expand out with an inhale and pull in on an exhale, or vice versa, that's fine. Start where you start. Start with what seems like the most organic way to begin for you. Then I want you to listen to the deep impulses in you. See if you have an impulse to let go of that connection to breath. And maybe the breath comes in and goes out, and you're not really aware, because what is happening is that your body's moving. It's moving on its own. And your body is restoring its natural pulsatory rhythm. And you're going to ride that wave to your laminate center. And maybe you'll meander over some of the edges for a while and things get a little more active, and then maybe you'll make your way back to that still center, and you begin to know, what's that zone for me? Where's that edge for me? Where's from the edge to the outside, that intermediate in-between space? Can I move into that and still feel that laminate center, that calm center within me? You'll find your way there. You'll find your way back to these laminate pools in the quiet center. So you begin this movement, and it'll have its own cycle, and then maybe you'll get bored. Maybe you'll think of something else. Maybe say, oh, that's enough of that. Fine. Return back to stillness, to your baseline. And we'll take another layer. Because as you begin to layer onto this, you begin to find richer and richer dimensions. So we go layer 2, baseline. Then maybe 3 to 5 long breaths. And then maybe that breath begins to move through your body as wave of pushing out and of pulling in, of coming to the edge and returning back into center, and infolding, and a whole new thing folding out, a whole new spectrum of coherence, expanding you into that space in between. And that will have its cycle, and that will die down. And then you can begin round 3 if you have time. But you just begin this exploration of baseline, breath, maybe 3 to 5, movement. And while we're moving, we are in this kind of aware state, but we're not making the movement choices. The movement is moving through us. So I'm going to lie down now. I hope you've already started. And I'm just going to do this a little bit with you. So we can all share this coherent way together. Down into my baseline. I'm familiar with that language of sensation. It's always different. And then your breath. open field of attention so you can take in the collective of your feelings, not just your will. You can hear the sounds around you, holding you and supporting you. There's a sense of connection with your environment and with the unfolding vitality within you. And now I want you to start to bring this to a close. And like any wave movement, there will be a rising and some kind of glorious peak. And then there will be a gentle descent. So it's a movement phrase, it's a breath cycle, it's a life cycle, it's a seasonal cycle. Cycles within cycles within cycles. All of these fractal dimensions nested within you. And then just lie there for a moment and take in the sensation. Breathe it in, taste it. Know that when you open yourself to hearing, the spaces around you open up. And when you pull your vision back toward the back of your head and you see the periphery, everything softens. And you find your roots. And you find your breath. And you find yourself held in the flow. And now whenever you're ready, I want you to bring yourselves slowly back. Let yourself rest in this quiet state. You're probably aware now that you're coming back into more of your normal waking state. But see if you can keep yourselves in this quieter phase. Don't go to the edge of the stream bank. Maybe you stay on the outer rim of the laminate pool. I'm also going to invite you, those of you who wish to put a question in the chat. I'm happy to answer questions. If you would like to also unmute yourself and turn on your cameras, we can have a nice chat as well. And before we get going with that part of it, I just also wanted to mention to you to take a look at the chat, because there are, there's an invitation. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer all of them for those of you who want to stay around. Also, I do have a special offer that I will be mentioning toward the end for those of you who might be interested in more of this work, we can talk about that.
Yes.
Hi, Jan. Yes.
That was really very profound. I love the jellyfish, and I think that as we're working with that, we can become very aware of areas, just like with our hands on the ribs when we're breathing. It's very easy to tangibly feel that your left or right might be, or front or back ribs may be more limited in movement than the other areas. And I think also that going in purely with the mind and the breath, you become also aware of areas that are tight, not flowing. They're not as jellyfish, as jelly, as they could be, as other areas. So would you say bring your attention to those areas in particular? Or would you just trust that process, as you kept the breathing, that would start to release in the areas of tension? How would you adapt that? Because some people have got very severe restrictions, and then some people it's just the pressures of life, and maybe they've forgotten how to breathe, or running around with the issues or worries about this, that, and the other. So would you just say, should you just practice this maybe once or twice a day? For how long? Is there a recommendation? Or would you say while you're doing this, when you do manage to do it, take your breath and your intention into that area? How would you?
It's such an interesting question, because as you say, there's such a variety of people with physical and emotional things that they start experiencing. So I don't give exercise prescriptions. What I say is connect with the sensation, and then let yourself really start to experience it as you stay with it, you might notice, oh, there's a restriction. But you just drop down a little bit deeper. You just get close to it. Not with the idea of fixing it, not with the idea of changing it. It's not like I have to fix this about myself, like to make myself better. It's really more of being in contact with these natural processes of our body to unwind, to return to your natural pulsatory rhythm. But we also we do have agency at the same time. We have self-agency, and if we approach from that place of affecting more ease, more flow, more coherence, then many times the body will just do it. The body will just unwind. Sometimes it's just putting your attention there and putting your intention there. So rather than saying, it's an exercise prescription, it can't be like that one size fits all thing for me anymore.
Thank you. Yes, because I was thinking as we were doing this, I think it's easy to, and I see this when I'm teaching fascial minding, people they find a restriction, they're aware of it, and then they instantly think it's got to be fixed. Or, oh my goodness, what's that about? What's that? And it is, and I just wanted to hear you just say that to really reinforce that it is, the minute we start thinking, oh, what's that? We're blocking the energy. And it is a letting go, isn't it? And it can be very hard to let go sometimes. So we do need that environment around us with the phones off and, maybe your voice in the background, because we're going to leave this over the full festive season, everybody, so you can come back and re-watch this. And many people who haven't joined us today can come in and watch this. And until we get the idea and the hang of the breath and just trusting the body, like we trust the body to breathe us when we let go of the breath. And you say, just wait for the breath to come in, allowing the body to breathe us rather than going, oh, I want you to breathe. And it is that instinctive panic or fear or judgment or all of these things that we bring in with our ego, our conscious mind. I think that
we bring it in, yes, but we also absorb it through the culture that we're in. We're in such a hurry, rush, organized, time-structured overculture that a lot of times we just absorb that without even realizing it. So to come back to trusting the body about when to breathe is very powerful, and also to trust the body to move.